Hey, all of you beautiful people, what is up? I am the Bests, aka Brian, and this is the first episode of SnailCast, my brand new monthly podcast that I'm gonna do on top of making Snail Comics. So, I basically have been stuck in quarantine for a very long time, as everyone else has, and I figured, well, not only do I want to make more Snail Comics, but I also kind of want to get back into video making. But that's kind of annoying because I have to edit videos. So I decided to make a podcast, which requires way less editing. So, I mean, that's a plus on my part. So really quickly, I'm gonna just go over the format for any future episodes. It's always gonna be me. I'm gonna be the guy talking, and occasionally I'll have some special guests to come on, and they might repeat, but I'm gonna be the host. I'm always the host. So I figured, since I just graduated high school, for this episode, the very first one, why don't I talk about my school experiences? And oh boy, I have some very interesting school experiences that I'm gonna tell you about. Really, most of them are just, hey, school kind of sucks. And there's a few interesting ones, though, that are a bit more juicy. So, the first one is school online and how much it sucks. Oh boy, do I hate school online. So, I have to use Google Meet to meet up with all my classes, and it's not good. I had to use Zoom once, but then the teacher switched over to Google Meet because that's what the school's doing. God, my bed is loud. Alright, I'm sorry if you can hear my bed move around when I move. It's, you'll hear something like this. Ready? Or, so if you can hear that, then I'm sorry, but, I'm doing it in my room. I'm recording in my room, because that's where it's quietest, but when I move, my bed kind of rattles, and it can be a little bit loud, so I'm very sorry about that. I'll try to move as little as possible. So anyways, back to what I was saying. My teacher switched over back to Google Meet, and either way, Google Meet is not good, and neither is Zoom. I don't really like either of them. I mean, granted, they work fine, but just, I'd rather, not have to meet up with my classes to talk about things that are completely unrelated to what's going on in the class. Which some of the classes had that, and other ones, like my media production, would just be like, all right, really quickly, I'm gonna go over what you're doing this week. He'd go over what you're doing with us for the week, and he'd be like, all right, any questions? The only class that was like a regular class almost was my music tech class. But I didn't mind that one. That was the one that I didn't mind because I really like all the kids in there and the teacher. He's a cool guy as well. So, if any of you guys are listening to this, as for the other classes, I mean, they were all way more boring than most regular classes. Media production, especially because we didn't watch movies, but which is what we did a lot in media production. But I mean, that's to be expected. So, now for some of the bad experiences from school. They're mostly going to be from this year. So, and other years. So, there was this one time I was sitting in one of my math classes, and there's this girl. She was very strange. No one really liked her, I'm pretty sure. And her legs just started to turn blue. Because she wasn't getting blood to them. And we don't know why. Her feet started to turn blue. They had to call up the nurse. And she was wheeled down from the classroom down to the nurse's office. And I'm just like, what? What is going on? Another day, she didn't want to take a test. At that time, she wanted to take it in another class called, I don't know what the other class is, because I didn't have that one. So I actually scratched that. If someone can comment and tell me what class that is, and you go to the same school as me, then please do comment that so that way people will know who don't go to the same school as me. Well, I don't go there anymore, but who used to. Um, but so she got really mad, and then she just called her mom to go pick her up from school, like right before everyone else was about to take the test. Teacher just took her outside of the room and like scolded her for that, and I'm pretty sure she was sent to the principal's office and got in trouble for that. But um, so there was that, and then um, here are the experiences from this year. It's mainly this one. So there, in my media production class, there are a bunch of different projects, right? Um, so in each project, it's like themed after a different type of thing. So the first one was just a normal tour. You didn't have to keep continuity in mind or anything. The second one was all about continuity. You can make two different videos, or just one video, but it had to be a compressed continuity part, which is like when you take a long stretch of time and then shrink it down, but still make it have sense within the world. For example, someone can't just be wearing a different outfit only an hour later, because that's not how it works. Like everyone, like if you're, unless you get your clothes dirty, then you're not going to change outfits in an hour. And then there was a continuous continuity part, which was all the shots had to match up from one to another. No time was skipped in between. So that one was really fun. I just filmed a movie about where I had to go to the bathroom, but then the bathroom was locked, and that was the continuous one. The compressed one with some other people in our group, they filmed a video of them sleeping, right, in class, and they're tired throughout the whole school day, and that's like the point. So it showed them going to different classes. They'd fall asleep in one class. They'd talk to their friends at lunch, things like that. So, and then, no, the last project that we did before quarantine was the absolute worst. It was a news project, and everything for my group just went horribly wrong. So, first thing was they assigned groups and started writing the scripts. I wasn't there for that day, which means that I had zero control of the script. And also, everyone had zero control of the groups, because the groups were randomly assigned, which means I would have gotten stuck with this group anyways, but at least I could have been like, alright, how about we, like, make a fake news story, and if you want it to be realistic, we can make it somewhat believable, but still, I kind of want to do something silly, because I feel like that would make a more entertaining video than just the show choir goes to a competition, which actually happened. And that's what happened. That's what we did. Alright, so then the teacher's like, alright, well, you need 2 interviews with people, and then you need to schedule those interviews with people for the main news segment, which for us was about, the show choir competition. So we had to get show choir kids. So one of the kids, though, was in the show choir. So we're like, alright, great. You can talk to the other kids in show choir and schedule things with them. And he didn't do it good. He did a horrible job at scheduling, and we didn't get any interviews with any of the show choir kids. So instead we interviewed him. And I'm like, okay, well, this is kind of going to be, like, dumb, because, it's entirely like a different person. It's the same person who's going to be in the anchor segment, right? And they're going to all know. And it's like, if he doesn't use a fake name, then it's going to be like, oh, well, that's going to be a problem. So we're like, alright, well, you know what? Also, one of the days he forgot his SD card. And I'm like, oh, well, I should have mine in my bag. And then I also forgot my SD card at my house, meaning that we couldn't film for the interview part. And that kind of sucked, but I brought my SD card later, and he just lost his. So he didn't, He didn't have it. I'm pretty sure we actually interviewed one person on that SD card from the show choir, but then he lost it. So either way, we only had one interview, and it was of the kid who was the news anchor for the news anchor segment, and I was the other news anchor. So it's like, oh, at this point, it's already going horribly. Then this was like right before, I believe February break. So, it's February, February break is gonna come. And he's like, yeah, I'm leaving 3 days early to go to, like, Texas. And he tells us this on a Tuesday. If he's leaving 3 days early, that means that he's leaving on Wednesday. He tells us the day that he's leaving. So he's like, we can't just, not rush this filming. And I'm like, well, and if that was the case, then you should have told us that earlier. Because, that way we could have planned ahead. But no, we can't. So, oh well. So then, me and the other kids in our group film B-roll. And, we can't film the anchor segment. Because, again, he's the other news anchor. We film stuff for the weather segment, though. We film stuff for the sports segment, which there's an interview for that. The kid who was doing the sports segment thing got an interview set up with a kid on the sports team. So at least we did have 2 interviews, which was the requirement. And this is where things kind of go bad, though. Because the next week, after February break, we come back, and the kid isn't there. So we're like, okay, well, and the teacher's like, you guys need to finish filming, like, relatively soon. And the kid doesn't show up on the last day that we can film. So me and one of the kids who was the weatherman end up being the anchor people. But since he's also the weatherman, he now has to improvise as a different character for the part where he's like not the weatherman, for the anchor segment, I mean. So now he's like, he has to come up with a fake name. He has to, like, do everything. We don't really know the script because each person wrote their own part of the script that they were in, except for me, because I was out the day that the script was written. So he only wrote the weather segment of the script because he's supposed to, report the weather. So he only wrote the weather's part, which also included a little bit of traffic, but who really cares if it's traffic and weather or if it's just weather? That's not important to the story. Also, the guy has a cast on his arm. That's important later. So then we all start editing after we film this, right? We don't get that far into editing. I'm editing the main anchor segment. He's editing the news, and then the other kid is editing the sports. So it's basically the parts that we were in that we edit. Cool. So then, the next day, the kid who left 3 days early shows back up, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry I wasn't here, blah, 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 whatever excuses he had. So, I'm like, okay, well, fine, just help us edit. And I realized, oh, there's nothing for him to edit. Well, you know what? You can help them because they're not that great with the editing software. I was decent with it. Like, I wasn't the best, don't get me wrong. Because at my home, I edit all my videos on Microsoft Movie Maker. This is Adobe Premiere Pro, which is a way more complicated movie editing program than Microsoft Movie Maker, which is literally free, and it came installed on, like, a ton of different computers a while ago. They stopped having it on computers pre-installed, so then you had to go download it, and eventually Microsoft just discontinued it, but there are archived uploads of it, the file, and since it's free, it's not like, oh, well, you're technically stealing it from Microsoft because it was free back then. It's still free now, thanks to archived recordings. So I got that on my computer now. So I can edit videos if I really want to. But back to the story. I'm editing my part, and I'm leaving gaps because I don't have the news No, because I have the news segment and the interview, like the main anchor segment, plus the interview with the kid who was in the show choir, who is also the kid who is supposed to be the other anchor. And I'm leaving gaps so that way I know when I get all the other people's videos, right? So they have to edit their thing. They have to then put that as a regular video file, give me the video file, then I'd have to splice it in. But then this kid comes up with a better idea. I don't know what his idea was, but it did not work at all. And we're almost out of time. And I'm like, all right, well, it's a Friday. I have to get picked up on Fridays anyways, because I have my bass guitar at the school. And, my bass guitar is big, it's heavy, it's in a huge case. It won't fit on the bus. I don't have a car, so I can't drive home. So I have to get picked up by someone. So I'm like, okay, well, I know who's picking me up this week, and I know I can just text them that I'm going to have to stay after. And then the teacher's like, alright, listen, a lot of you guys haven't finished the project. This was supposed to be the day that I was due. So he says, you guys haven't finished the project, I'm extending the deadline. I'm like, thank God, because, if he didn't extend the deadline, we would have turned it in late and gotten less points. I mean, I'm pretty sure we would have gotten a 95 because we turned it in after school, but that's 95 at most if everything is perfect, which everything was not perfect. So then the next Monday comes around, I'm editing the video, and I'm like, alright, well, let's see what he can do, try to splice the video files together. Again, doesn't work. And then I'm like, alright, well, I can't stay after today, because both of my brothers, who were home on spring break at the time, were busy, right? And so, I don't know. That's just kind of what happened, right? Their spring break was extended another week, and then the week after it was extended was when quarantine started, so, But, so, he's like, oh, well, I can go home and edit it, because I have Adobe Premiere on my home thing. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, if no one else can stay after, that's what we're gonna have to do. So we give him the files, all the files, and he tries to edit it at home. And I'm like, okay, so we're gonna at most get a 90 if everything is perfect. Everything is not perfect, so I'm expecting a 70, maybe a 60 and at worst, obviously, I had no idea, So, now, he's editing the video, he comes back, and he's like, oh, I had a family emergency. I couldn't edit it last night. And I'm like, oh, okay. So, I'm gonna just say this. He could be lying. I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt, though, and say that he's not lying. But even then, I also had tons of personal issues. My grandfather was in the hospital because he had a stroke a long while ago. He recently passed away, for those who are unaware, which I assume most of you are. But at the time, he was in a hospital, and the hospital was allowing, one visitor now. They only allowed one. So now, even if I want, alright, because this was when the virus was starting to pick up steam. So, this was before the hospital said, we're completely shutting down, no visitors. They were like, alright, we're gonna have just one visitor per patient. And that visitor was obviously going to be my grandma. So now, I can't see my grandfather, even if I was free that day, had no work, nothing at all to do, I couldn't, and my parents were going, and, my parents were free, or my brother were free, and we wanted to visit my grandfather, we couldn't. That's a big family issue, I would say. But yet, I still got my part of the project done. Him not getting his part of the project done, well, I'm also experiencing family issues is just kind of, I don't know, that just kind of seems unfair to me. I mean, who knows? Maybe it wasn't unfair. Maybe his family issue was way more important than my grandfather being in the hospital and me not being able to visit him. But I don't think it was. I really don't. So, now, alright, this is like, I'm like, alright, well, you gotta be able to edit it today, right? And he's like, yeah, I can edit it today. So then, I'm like, alright, well, I don't know if he can, but I can't stay after. I don't have Adobe Premiere at my home. I can't edit it at my home, so I can't ask him for it to do that. And of course, he doesn't. Eventually, one of the days, by the way, he just is like, alright, well, I fell asleep while editing. But tonight, I know that I'm going to be able to edit it because... No, I'm going to stay up and edit it because my friends are coming over. And I'm like, okay, just make sure that you don't forget. And that's what I said. I said something along the lines of that. But in my head, I was thinking, oh my god, he's not going to edit it because his friends are going to distract him. The next day, he's like, I didn't get to edit because my friends ended up distracting me and also we came across problems. And I'm like, oh my god. So then we, are working on it in class because the teacher isn't there. So we have a sub, and the sub just says, get any unfinished work that you have finished, and then you can turn it in when he gets back. So we're like, all right, yeah, that works. So we're editing in class, and he just doesn't, whatever he's doing, I don't know what it is, but it doesn't seem right. It just doesn't seem right. I asked my friends who finished their project on time how they combined the different parts, because they had different people editing the different parts. And they just did my method, which was save it as a movie file, right? I'm pretty sure it's H264, the file that we had to save it as. Then you take, right, so you do that for the non-anchor segments. Then you take those and insert them into the anchor segment. And then you save the entire project from there as an H264. And whatever he did, ended up corrupting the files, so we had to re-edit the whole movie. There was one day, by the way, when we were editing, I probably should have mentioned this earlier, where the kid with the cast was getting it removed, and he was mad for not telling us that he wasn't going to be there because he was getting his cast removed. And I'm like, he had a cast, he was going to get it removed at some point. What did you expect? I mean, I don't remember him telling us. But, he could have, and I could have just not heard it. But anyways, this kid who was the editing got mad at him. And I'm like, okay, you have no right to do it. Basically, now, he turns it in several days late, close to around 10 days late. And that means that I got close to, if not, I did get a 0 on this project, because he turned it in so late, and every single day that you're late, the teacher has a policy. Every single day that you're late, you get 10 points off. That's not the school policy, which is what they're supposed to use, but he does that. So, and I'm like, thank God he does that and not the school policy, because the school policy is much more harsh. It's like, if you turn in a project late, you get 50%, and then after a while, you just can't turn it in. If you do, you'll get no credit. Which would have been way worse, because that would have meant that we got 0 no matter what. So, me and my group have complained to the teacher enough that he decided to change how this project is graded. So there is the grade for the overall project as a whole, which I got close to, again, if not a 0 on it. But then, he added a personal grade for the project, which is how much work you put in. I'm pretty sure he gave us all great grades, except for the kid who turned in the project late. because, he didn't do his part because he kept on forgetting, or there were problems that he couldn't figure out, or whatever. I don't know. Look, it was just a mess. And then the best part, though, is that you get to write at the end of the project a reflection on the project, where you basically say, this is what went right, this is what went wrong. And during the reflection paper, I just basically shat on this kid. I just said, this kid screwed up everything. It was the absolute worst, and this is, why he should get less credit than us, if you read this. My two partners, who, they weren't the greatest, but they also weren't the worst, right? Like, I would have much rather preferred to be with my friends, and, but, like, they weren't bad at it. They didn't suck, but, like, they didn't know how to use the editing program too well. They did know what they were doing for the most part. So I can't say that they were terrible and that they were horrible group partners, because they really weren't. But they did the same thing where they basically just shat on the kid, and it was beautiful because yeah. But anyways, then report cards are released online because it's quarantine. Term 3 report cards. So I try to log on to the online website and it doesn't work, so I get my password reset by the school, and we go on with my mom. This term I was not doing so hot because online classes are the absolute worst. I already went over that. But we checked my grades for term 3, the report cards. All A's and B's, except for C- in media production. I would have had all A's and B's for my third term if it wasn't for that one project. I 100% guarantee you that. Alright? If it wasn't for that one project. So then the other night, I was with all my friends, and we were rewatching the video, and he cut out some parts that I edited in that I thought were, like, really nice. Like, there was, like, so, you know how, like, sometimes at the end of news, alright, like, when they end the news for, like, the full, hour that they've been doing it, they'll zoom out, and they'll, like, do a full shot of, like, all their equipment and stuff, and the news host, and it'll just look like they're chatting, and then we'll play a little jingle. So I wanted to simulate that. And for the music that I picked the Smash 64 menu theme, which is fantastic song. I love it. It's in every single Smash game since, by the way. If you basically really quickly, I'm gonna go over how you get it in every single Smash game after Smash 64, which is in Smash 64, it's the character select screen. But afterwards, if you beat a battle, and then you just sit on the results screen after the character's jingle will play, it will play that song. Like, the exact same version. It's the same MIDI file. It's this, literally no changes have been made since. I find that really cool. But anyways, so I downloaded this, and I put it in the video, and at the end, where it just, like, does that little zoom out thing I was describing. He cut out that whole part, and also, he cut out the green screen weather segment that we set up, because he couldn't get the green screen to work, and he was the one who got it to work in the first place, so I don't know what happened, and how he screwed it up the second time, but I think it might be because the first time he might have got help from the teacher, and then he forgot how to do it, so he couldn't, redo it at his house. But just kind of really sucks, because that means that we only had the weather segment. We had only one interview from the main news segment. And on top of that, he cut out what I think was one of the more interesting parts of the video. It added flair to it. It wasn't, like, super, like, engaging, but it just added that little extra flair that made it seem more official. On top of that, when I was editing the main anchor segments, they were kind of quiet, so I upped the volume. He didn't up the volume when he re-edited them, so they're incredibly quiet, and you can't really hear what's going on. All of my other videos for media production that we watched that night with my friends were just fine. They worked just like fine. They weren't bad, except for my very first one, where the music cut out halfway through. Oops, that one was not good. That was just the tour of the high school, though. That one doesn't really matter. Also, I didn't even know about continuity or anything, or how to make the camera more stable, like how to hold it more stable, so. But, holy crap, this project was just so bad that I would not be surprised if I got a 0 on it. I would not be surprised at all if the grade for the project, and not for my personal grade for how much effort I put in, was 0 out of 100. I would not be surprised. It was so bad. The two that I made after quarantine, parts of them were purposefully bad, and I think that's funny because it just embraces the fact that I'm not good at editing videos because I don't have a good editing software, and I also don't really know what I'm doing. And also, none of them were really scripted. I just was like, okay, I got an idea in my head. I mean, for the final one, it was like, I did some live action parts, which were very weird, but like the main part of it was, it was just like old photos and videos that we had from out the school year and me narrating over them. That was not scripted. I mean, that was scripted. Alright, I just heard my mom knock on my door and say that supper's almost ready. So, I mean, I better end up this podcast so that way I can go eat some food. I mean, I'm sure that most of you guys know how good food is. Food is pretty good. Anyways, I think that this is a good introductory episode. Normally I won't rant and, be so negative, but just that project, man, the whole thing with it, every single little piece of information about it, just kind of angered me more and more, and it just kind of sucks. So, that's the story of my media news project and how I probably got a 0 on it, because it's just so awful. Also, when I said that he cut out the green segment, that means that he cut out half of the weather segment. So it's just traffic. Which means, when we said, now over to whatever, I'm not using his actual name, so I'm going to call him Who's Its Face. So when we said, now over to Who's Its Face for weather and traffic, it made no sense, because we didn't talk about weather. We just talked about traffic. It was just, the whole thing was just an absolute mess. So, anyways, thank you all for tuning in on the first episode of SnailCast. If you want to see more, you can head to SoundCloud if you prefer SoundCloud. My username there is The Bests. Or you could subscribe to my YouTube channel, also The Bests. That's spelled THEBESTS. No spaces. And you could also check it out on one of my Instagram. They are the one that they are. I should probably just actually give you the Snail Comics one, which is at Snail Comics, no spaces. Spelled like the words snail and then comics right after. I mean, if you don't know how to spell snail or comics, then I don't know how great your spelling ability is. I'm not going to go over how to spell Snail Comics, but, at Snail Comics, and also The Bests on YouTube and SoundCloud. So, that is all for this episode. I will see you guys next month with a next episode. I don't know what it's going to be about yet, but we will see. Bye.